Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of the Manifesting Muslim Ramadan series, Aligning with Allah. In today's episode, we are going to talk about starting over. Starting over with the information that you have, with the knowledge that you have, with the ideas that you have. One of the things that happens for many of us, whether we are born into the religion or we have chosen it later on in life, is that quite often we can get attached to the information that we were initially given, especially if that information comes from our family, our loved ones, our parents, even if it's very close friends or people that we hold at a very high rank, an imam, a sheikh, someone that we respect greatly. As a result of that, it can feel like a betrayal sometimes to start over on that information, to say, you know what, I don't accept that this is necessarily the correct information for me, and so I need to figure it out on my own. It can feel disrespectful, it can feel like a betrayal, but quite often it can be very necessary for all of us to do this with the information that we have around Islam. Unfortunately, with stuff as big as religious and spiritual matters, quite often the information that we are being told is, as I've mentioned in one of the first episodes that I did in this series, will come from the person, obviously very well meaning, but through their lens of expertise, experiences, perspectives, traumas, whatever they might have gone through. And so you're not necessarily getting the pure information. You're getting it filtered through their filters, whatever they may be. And again, they're not doing this because they're trying to give you misinformation or anything. It's not necessarily even that it is misinformation, but the perspective or the outcome of the information may just come out a little bit different than what it would have been if you just got the information yourself from like the Quran or doing your own research and understanding and reading up and so on and so forth. And the problem is that when we don't take the time to press the reset button, you don't have to do it completely, but with certain things that just don't sit right with you. Maybe there is just like a little piece of something about Allah or something about the Prophet or something about whatever it might be, the hijab, whatever it might be, that you're just thinking, I'm not sure about this. Do your own research. You don't have to just accept the information that you're being given by others and take that as like your default. You're allowed to say, you know what, I accept I respect the information that you're giving me because that's how you see it, but I will take this topic and I will research it myself. Here's a story that I don't actually know. I'm pretty sure I've shared it on the podcast before, but one of my reintroductions to Islam before I reverted was actually when I was going to W.H. Smith's, which, by the way, if you don't know, is a bookshop in the UK. And I was looking for just like a regular book and, anything to stay longer in the shop. So I kind of like perused around the shop and looked at other books and things. And I found myself in the religious aisles and just kind of looking through what they had around Islam and things like that. And I saw this one book and it said Islam for Dummies. And I had to have a little giggle to myself. And when I picked it up and I was like, oh my God, who even reads this? This is so funny. Like I didn't know because the whole like blank for dummies, like put in whatever subject or whatever and then for dummies. I've never actually at that point seen one of those books in real life before. I'd only heard about them. And so I was like, oh my God, that is so funny. I wonder what's in there. Like it must be something so basic or whatever. And I kind of picked this book up a little bit arrogantly, I'm not going to lie to you, because I was like, I'm raised by an imam. I was like, born into a Muslim family. Like I know Islam, And at this point, remember, I hadn't reverted back to Islam yet. So I picked up the book and I started flicking through the pages as one does and reading little bits and pieces here and some of the, the topics, the chapters and things. And then I realized something, my love. I realized that I was the dummy. This book was for me. because so many of the things, while perhaps I may have known some of the things in theory, I actually didn't know it. I did not, like, this book was teaching me things. As a Muslim, prior Muslim, previous Muslim, whatever you want to call it, as somebody who was raised with Islam, who has, the majority of her family are Muslims and was very much raised within like that whole culture and traditions and all of it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can still learn a lot. And again, as I said, it's not that all of it was new information to me. Many of the things that were in the book I'd known of, but I didn't understand the origin. I'd never seen sort of like where from the Quran was it taken, what in the Sunnah, where does it come from, what in the Hadith, all of those things. I didn't have the details. I had sort of like, in many ways, sort of like the watered down, lived through information from my parents, from my society, from, just kind of living as a Muslim and not having done my own research. And I bought the book. I bought the book because I thought, when I'm sitting here thinking like I can talk about Islam, like maybe I couldn't. And so I started reading that book, and that was the moment for me when I realized there was a specific passage, and I can talk about this in a different episode if you'd like to hear it, but there was a very specific passage in the book where I was like, oh, I actually really believe in Allah and the Prophet. And I think I always did, but I didn't know that it was through Islam. And it really opened the door for me to revert back to Islam. But it did so because I had to really understand within myself that perhaps while I thought I knew a lot, I actually was hardly scraping the surface, because I was very much sort of in the whole, well, I'm just kind of living it because that's just what I've known, but never fully taken the time to deep dive and understand for myself and know where the things were coming from. And unfortunately, many of us have this, and it's not, listen, there's nothing wrong with it per se. We can talk about, hey, we can do better as people, and we can always do better, right? But there's nothing wrong with it. But it certainly helps us if we want to create a strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to understand what it is that we're actually following. What is Allah actually saying? And what does it actually mean? And again, not through somebody else's experiences or perspectives, but from the way that we read and understand and take in this information, because it genuinely shapes our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when we take it way back and we allow ourselves, we give ourselves the permission to say, you know what, maybe I could benefit from being a bit of a dummy, putting myself in the dummy position and saying, let me start from scratch. What is Islam? Like really start from scratch. And I allowed myself to do that. And it was one of the best things I think I could have ever done for myself, was to say, you're allowed to be a dummy, Zara. Yes, you were raised in Islam and your dad is an imam, and, all the books in your childhood home. Like my dad has a wall full of books, of just books like that are about Islam, the Sunnah, Hadith, the Prophet, everything. Like any topic around Islam is there. And so I had the access to all of this information, and I still had to sort of like swallow my own pride and ego and be like, that doesn't mean that you know everything, because everything that you know is through what your mum and dad have told you. And that was a little bit hard to admit to, in how old was I when I picked up that book? 25, something like that, maybe. But it was the best thing that I could have done for myself, to say I'm allowed to start over. Even though, so we're not starting over saying I'm no longer believing. It's saying I'm believing, but I'm believing to the extent that I'm allowing myself the grace to learn by my own, to create an understanding for myself, instead of just accepting the premise that everybody else is giving you and saying I have to respect them or they know more than me, and then saying, but knowledge is acquired by, going out and acquiring the knowledge, by going out there and seeking it out. And so seek out the information, seek out the knowledge, even if you have to start from scratch, even if you have to start from the literal beginning. But it's something very, very beautiful to do, because it creates a secureness and a certainty and a calmness in your religious pursuit and in your spiritual journey that you don't get from other people. It's to the point for me, at least, and I'm not saying that it has to be that for you, but to the point now where even, I will listen to, I'm a great big fan of Omar Suleiman's podcast and Mufti Menk and also Bilal Assad. But when they say things in the podcast, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I don't just take it and run with it. I understand that they may have said it through their lens and their filters. So I will go and do my own research on it. What is the correct wording? What's the basis of it? Where does it come from? Why did this thing come about? Because I need to make sure that I understand it from my perspective. So even when I'm listening to somebody who has a great big understanding and knowledge and a lot of, status and whatever within, like, when it comes to like Islam and the understanding of knowledge and the passing on of knowledge and whatever, I will still, research the stuff that they say, because it's important for me that I have a personal and intimate relationship with all the pieces of information and knowledge that resonate with me, so that I understand it for myself. As I said, you don't have to do that necessarily. This is not a question of you can never trust anyone. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But get used to doing your own research, bringing it back. Where is the information coming from? What is the hadith about it? What is the sunnah? What does the Quran say? What is, what is the whole understanding of it? What's the history of it? And then watch as slowly but surely you're starting to create more of a secure, calm, stable foundation of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most beautiful place to create and hold a relationship. It will help you so greatly in building the trust that I keep coming back to in this series. But in general, to build that trust with Allah, it has to come from somewhere. So in my perspective and what I've been telling you in this episode, it comes from building an understanding. So start understanding, even if it means you have to go back to ground zero. All right, my darling, thank you so much for joining me for another episode. I will see you, inshallah, in tomorrow's episode. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in love.